Hello everyone, I am Shruti Vijayargi from BISP Solution. There is another video for Microsoft Excel. In this video, I am going to explain you the payments functions of Microsoft Excel. In my previous video, I discussed the three functions of payments which are IPMT, PRINC and IPMT. In this video, I am going to explain you ISPEmpty function, PMT function and PPMT function. So first is the ISPEmpty function. This function is used for calculating interest paid during a specific period. When you take out a loan, either you or your accountant might need to know how much interest you paid for a given period. For example, if your business borrows $250,000 for some facility upgrades, you might be able to write off some or all of the interest paid for a given month, quarter, or year. You can discover how much interest you paid on a specific loan payment by using the ISPEmpty function. So this function is used to calculate the interest paid during a specific period of an investment. So this function does take the four arguments. The first one is the rate, which is simply the annual interest rate on the loan. Then we have the period, which is the payment for which we are interested in calculating the interest component. Then we have number of periods, and the number of periods is the number of payments throughout the life of the loan. And then finally we have the present value, which is the amount that we have borrowed. So let's understand this with the help of an example. An example of this, the first one is the interest rate, the number of periods, the period for first, and the total number of periods is 2 years, and the present value. So how to calculate ISPEmpty? Just select the cell, type an equal sign, type the function ISPEmpty, and pass the references for all the arguments. The first one is the rate, which is 8%, and I divide the interest rate by 12 because we are calculating for monthly payments, and then comma, the period I am calculating for the first month, then comma, NPR just 2 years, and we are calculating for a month payment, so we have to convert it into months, so I multiply it into 12, and then putting comma and then the present value, then write parenthesis. We see that the interest paid for the payment was about 1597.22, and it is a negative and it shows that the payment is going out. Now if we change it to the last period 1 to by typing 24, which means the last period, and press enter, we see we have to pay no interest, that means zero. So it was exclusively principal. You can use the ISPEmpty function to find out exactly how much of a payment was interest. You should check with your professional to find out if you can write off the interest you pay. If so, the ISPEmpty function will tell you how much that it's okay. So the next function I am going to explain is the PMT function, and this function is used for calculating the loan payment. Most loans, whether between business or made by businesses to individual borrowers, are fully amortized. Fully amortized means that the monthly payments made over the term of the loan pay off the principal and all of the accrued interest. In Excel, you can calculate the monthly payments required to pay off a fully amortized loan by using the PMT function. So this function calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. So this function can take the 5 arguments. The first one is the rate, and this is exactly what you expect the annual interest rate. Next we have the number of payments, and that's just the number of payments that you need to make. And then we have the present value, and that is the amount that you owe. And next is the future value of the loan, and that is the amount that you want to end up with after you make your payments. And then finally you have the type of payment you are going to be making, and that can either be 0 or 1. If it's 0, you make payment at the end of the period. If it is 1, then you are making the payment at the beginning of a period. And if you omit the argument passing this argument, then the default value will be 0, and which shows that the payment is done at the end of the period. So let's begin with the example. I have an example of PMT function. This example returns the monthly payment of $5,000 loan at annual rate of 7.5%. The loan is paid off in 2 years. All payments are made at the beginning of the period, because here type is 1, which means beginning of period. And there is no future value, which is 0. So PMT can be calculated by selecting the cell, type an equal sign, write the function name, and pass the references for all the arguments. First one is the interest rate and should be divided by 12 or not. There's no need, we can calculate it yearly because there is number of pairs. Okay, so the number of pairs is 2 years, present value, future value, and type. So this is the output of this calculation, 2590. The next function is the PPMT function. In Excel, the PPMT function returns the payment on the principal for a particular payment based on an interest rate and a constant payment schedule. Calculating the amount of principal you have paid on a loan lets you determine the amount of equity you have in your purchase. Your equity is simply your down payment plus any loan principal paid plus appreciation of the asset. The PPMT functions lets you calculate the principal. There, there are following arguments for PPT function. The first one is the rate is exactly what you would expect, the annual interest rate. Period identifies the period for which you want to identify the principal. Then we have number of pairs as the number of payments for the loan. And then we have the PV, which is the present value, the total amount that a series of future payments is worth now. And then we have FB, which stands for the future value or a cash balance you want to attain after the last payment is made. If FB is omitted, it is assumed to be 0, that is the future value of a loan is 0. Then the last argument is the type, which is an optional argument. It indicates when the payments are due. If the type parameter is omitted, the PPMT function assumes a type value of 0, and it will take two types of arguments: 0, which represents payments are due at the end of the period, and 1 represents payments are due at the beginning of the period. So let's begin with the example. Here is the data for PPMT function. The first one is the rate, which is 6%. We are making 20th month payment at a loan of 8,000 with an annual payments at an annual interest rate of 6%. The loan is to be paid off in 4 years, and all payments are made at the end of the period, which therefore type is 0. So the PPNT can be calculated by just selecting the cell, type an equal sign, select the function PPMT, and pass the references for all the cells. 6%, we have to divide it by 12 because payments are done monthly, and we are calculating for the 20th month payment. So the next argument is period, and the calculation is going to be held for 4 years, and it should be converted into month. So I multiply this with 12, and the present value is of $8,000. FV here is 0, and the payment is done at the end of the period. So here is the output, and the value is in negative because this represents outgoing payments. So if you have any queries, you can comment me, and thanks for watching.